It took weeks of back and forth before House Republicans were able to pass what President Trump has coined his big, beautiful bill. White House is saying that it is on the road now. While House Speaker Mike Johnson has been celebrating this accomplishment, he's also voiced concerns over how the Senate may alter the bill, heavily encouraging Senate Republicans, to make as few modifications to the package as possible. But now that the bill has reached the Senate, how likely is it that Republican senators are going to heed that advice? And will they struggle as heavily as House Republicans to find common ground on various aspects of that bill? Joining me today to unpack all of this is Oklahoma Republican Senator Markwayne Mullin. Having served 5 terms in the House before joining the Senate, Mullin has emerged as a key bridge between the Senate GOP and congressional Republicans and the White House since President Trump began his second term. He's made it a personal mission to ensure communication flows between the chambers, especially when it comes to complicated legislation like this. Senator, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me on.
So what is your take? You know, there's been all kinds of stuff flying out there about this bill, and from the conservative side of the party, real concern about that the cuts are not deep enough and that they should be deeper going in.
Well, I think all of us would agree that we would like deeper cuts. The fact is, can you get them? And then can you get the votes you need on them? We've been discussing the reconciliation, as you know, since really November, when we knew this was going to be the possibility. And everybody, as you know, has ideas, but those ideas don't mean anything if you can't get the votes. And so people like Ron Johnson and Mike Lee and even Mitch McConnell or Susan Collins or the guys that are in the middle, we all want to contribute to the bill. At the end of the day, though, we're going to put a bill forward that can get the 51 votes it needs in the Senate and still keep 218 in the House. The president has been engaged with us from day one. There isn't a week that goes by, really a day that goes by, we're in session, that I'm not in communication with the House, and I'm not in communication with the White House, and that we're not communicating all together in the Senate, trying to get the ideas together. So now everybody can talk about their ideas. It's your job to get the votes on it. And now it's time to put the package together like the House did. And I believe we'll deliver this one big, beautiful bill. You know, when we first started, people were talking about 2 bills, 3 bills. They were talking about $5 trillion in cuts. And then they were talking about $900 billion in cuts. I think we're at $1.6 trillion in cuts. And maybe in deficit spending, and maybe we can even do better than that. But we are still going through the scrubbing of it through the bird rule, which I call the bird bath. And we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, that's important to point out. You can only do so much in a reconciliation to get the simple majority to pass it in the budget structure. But where is the fissure here? Where is the line that you're trying to cross by, the president said the Senate could change it, it could make it better, but there is this balancing act that you have to, if you change it, make it so that it can pass muster with House Republicans that just barely passed what they passed.
Well, what we can't do is we can't go below $1.6 trillion in deficit spending. That's a hard line, red line with the House. We know that for sure. We also know that they don't want to change the tax policies, which is fine. So we're not wanting to change the tax policies. In fact, what we're wanting to do is make some of the stuff that wasn't permanent, like R&D, research and development, we want to make that permanent. But it's very important that your audience knows, I know you know this, but a lot of your audience may not understand that the House doesn't have to deal with the bird rule. We do. And the difference between what a budget is and what reconciliation is in reconciliation, we can only deal with mandatory spending, not discretionary spending. Discretionary spending is where we deal with the budget. Mandatory spending is stuff that's on automatic pilot, and then we can only deal with taxes. And so when the House doesn't have to deal with that. The House can get into mandatory spending, they can get into discretionary spending, they can get into everything between taxes. I mean, Bernie Sanders one year had one of his colleagues in the House put in a minimum wage increase, which got kicked out through the bird rule. So once it gets scrubbed, the bill's going to look a little bit different. And then we're going to have to mesh it back together. We are not wanting to rebuild this. What we want to do, and we've been very clear, the White House has been very clear with it, we want to keep the frame that the House gave us. We want to keep it intact. We may go in and repaint the interior walls. We may even redecorate a room or two, but the structure of the bill is really good what the House put together, and so we just want to overlay it and then give it back to them, and hopefully we have a better bill, not a worse bill. Now, there's one big sticking point that we've got to look at. Right now, the deficit or the debt increase is 4.5, I think, $4.5 trillion for the debt increase, and but that only gives us 2 years. The problem with that is, politically speaking, that puts us right against the midterm or just after the midterm. And we can't guarantee what the midterm election is going to look like. And if, God forbid, we were to lose the chambers, both House and Senate, or just one of them, the negotiating on increasing the debt limit increase, because with the president's economic impact he's having, which is positive, we're seeing our GDP grow. We really feel like the tax portion of it will really see the economy grow. We feel like we're going to be able to balance this budget with a deficit cut probably in a year, maybe 2 years. So we know we're going to eventually be able to quit borrowing the money, but now we have to so we don't default. But we want to put it past midterm. What I would like to do, and what the president would like to do, in fact, the president and I talked about this last Friday, is that we would like to take it past his term and put it out of his presidency, not because we're trying to put it on somebody else. We feel like it gives his policies on the economy time to meet our debt increase where we won't have to borrow any more money. And so the next president can just basically keep it on autopilot, and we'll be able to start paying down the deficit. But we're going to have to borrow money at least one more time. And that's a huge sticking point, because when you increase it, then you're increasing the deficit spending technically, even though you're increasing it for years down on this reconciliation package. It looks like we're increasing deficit spending, and we're actually not. But it's the way that it gets scored by the Congressional Budget Office, right. CBO.
So, I mean, for people who are not inside Washington, haven't been through this process, or they watch it from afar, to a lot of people, it looks like we're just moving the shells around, and we're kind of saying this cut is really a cut, but in essence, it's a cut on an increase. It's not really a cut. And when you say no tax on tips, yeah, it's no tax on tips. It's no tax on Social Security. Well, it's up to $4,000. There are gimmicks inside this thing that make the numbers work. That maybe isn't as cut and dry as it's sold to the American people on the campaign trail.
Well, they're real cuts. We're cutting $1.6 trillion in deficit spending. Those are real cuts. When you start looking at no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, and no tax on overtime, it's a game changer, because you take it just Social Security, for instance. Those that are living on Social Security that's getting $1,600 a month, or maybe they're getting $900 a month, or maybe they're getting $2,300 a month. It depends on what level you was at. Those individuals that are getting that, they're depending on that, and they depend on almost every dollar of it. And so you take the tax portions off of it, that's going to put money into the economy. That's going to flow through our local economy. That's going to flow through our states, and eventually flow into Washington, D.C. You take no tax on tips. Really, most of the cash that we were getting, that probably wasn't being taxed anyways. Now you're getting no tax on the credit card tips. What's important about that is restaurants only operate at about a 2% margin. Now, when the business owner isn't having to match that FICA on that extra taxes coming out of there, that's more that he can put back into his business. As a former restaurant owner, my wife, I say me, but it was really her that was running it. Man, that's a huge, huge deal. And then for us, we own a bunch of service companies. It doesn't do the guys any good when they want to work overtime, because they hit a different tax bracket. And so they get charged so much more in taxes, where now you're going to see a lot more overtime because, hey, it's free money. I'm getting taxed on 40 hours. I'm not getting taxed on my time and a half. Or for us, we pay double time, anything over 40. I'm not getting taxed on that. You're going to see the workload from employees increase. That means it's going to go into the economy too. That's why President Trump's economic plan, you're going to see skyrocket, which why we're doing a little bit here. What you're not seeing is how much increase it's going to have into our local economies, our state economies, and our federal economy. And that's why we see that the lines are going to hit each other in about 2 years if we keep at this pace. And we could literally, for the first time, we could see that we start paying down the deficit. That's the first time since, correct me if I'm wrong, is it Clinton?
Yeah,
that
Clinton.
paid down?
Yep.
Yeah.
That would be, the first Clinton term into the second. And you're right. It would be a big deal. But for somebody who looks at this and says it's not really taking down in big numbers the deficit and debt, and
Wow.
What would you say? That your 1.6 is a big number?
That's a big number. Could we do better? Maybe, but we're kind of limited. And keep in mind, if we're running Oklahoma politics, we could probably do better. But we still got to deal with guys that, and I don't. This is no backhand to Susan Collins. I think the world of her. I think she's the only Republican that can ever carry Maine, and so we got to have her. But we've still got to deal with Maine. We still got to deal with Republicans that are in the House from California. And we still got to deal with Republicans from Alabama and everything else. And so they're different. We look at it different. That's why, it's a mesh. That's why this bill is good, not perfect. But there's never been a perfect bill. But this is how we are able to get 218 in the House and 51 in the Senate. Not everybody's going to be happy about it, but that's called negotiating. And people want D.C. to operate more like a business. I will tell you, this is the first time that I've actually seen a spending bill that wasn't what I would consider full of gimmicks. Every time else we talked about deficit spending, we talk about it, and this, 10-year deficit spending.
Right.
This is this fiscal year deficit spending, cutting $1.6 trillion. We've never done that in my time in Congress, be it in the House or in the Senate. So I feel actually really good about it, except we negotiated. And when I negotiated deals since I was 20 years old, I always wanted 110%, and that's where all these great ideas and bigger spending cuts come from. People want 110%, but we start negotiating down, and this is probably somewhere around 75% of the 110%. I tell people I'll walk away at 69%, but I'll accept anything over 70. Mm-hmm. I'm happy about accepting this, and President Trump has led from the front from day one on this. He is every single week. Himself or the vice president or Susie or somebody from the cabinet is in our meetings talking to us every single week on Capitol Hill. And so it's been really coordinated by the White House on making sure we deliver on President Trump's promises.
All right, explain the Democratic talking point about $880 million coming out of Medicaid. And I know there's an explanation. Some of that is about illegal immigrants who are not qualified or not able by law to accept Medicaid. And then there's other stipulations that add up to that number.
So the first of all, the Democrats are leading by fear. They also said the tax cuts are for billionaires, and we're like, we're actually making current tax policy permanent, and we're keeping it from increasing on the average household. That if we let it expire at the end of this year, would increase the average household $1,400 a month in taxes or a year. So they just fear. They lead from fear. Now, talk about the Medicaid cuts. This is what's happened under the last 4 years of the Biden administration. We can't find a single person that was denied coverage by the Biden administration, meaning everybody was automatically enrolled and accepted into Medicaid. Just at first glance, we found 1.5 million illegals that was on Medicaid, meaning that they weren't pardoned, they were in the country illegally. Not a future court date. They should have never been there. We found 22 illegals at one address that was receiving Medicaid benefits. Then when we looked at a different one, we found 6 million that was never qualified to be able to be enrolled in Medicaid, meaning these were males that were single with no dependents and had no medical history. So we found 7.5 million people in Medicaid that should have never been accepted. That's at first glance. When we start digging into it, You start looking at the states that have work requirements that was being denied to be able to increase, to be able to enforce work requirements that were being put in place. You start looking at individuals that were literally outside the state. We had people that were living outside the country that were able to get benefits. So we're not cutting benefits for anybody that qualifies underneath the current Biden administration plan for Medicaid. We're not removing one single person that actually qualifies. The people we're kicking off and the money we're saving is simply by waste and fraud in the Medicaid system.
And you can say that definitively.
That is beyond me.
And when the Democrats say this is cutting, you're coming after grandma's Medicaid, you can say definitively that is not happening.
Not one single, well, first of all, Medicaid, grandma probably isn't on that, probably on Medicare with Medicaid supplement.
Supplement, yeah.
But we look at, there isn't one single child, there isn't one single mother, there isn't one single father that qualifies for Medicaid that's going to lose any benefits. Nothing. We're not cutting the amount of benefits. We're not doing anything. We're just kicking off the people that are frauding the system.
And for the growth part, the taxes, much of it is to prevent the taxes from going up and to make them permanent, the tax cuts permanent, which is a big deal for, as you mentioned, families, not just millionaires and billionaires. But stimulatively, like, where is the growth part of this? Keeping it the same, one would think, is a positive, but is not like a supercharge into the economy.
Well, I disagree with that because as a business owner, I don't make just 5-year plans. I don't make 12-month plans. I make 15 and 20-year investments. Mm-hmm. And when you're making those 15 and 20-year investments, especially with manufacturing that we're trying to bring back to the United States, they need to have a surety that the tax burden that they're going to have is going to be around for a while. It's not going to expire in 4 years or 5 years. Fair. There isn't a single business loan that's out there that's 10 years or that's 5 years. They're all 10 years to 20 years. And so you have to, it brings a surety, it brings confidence. People do business inside the United States because we're reliable. We typically don't have a government that's flipping back and forth. Regulations sometimes for up until the last 10 years was pretty consistent. Tax policy was pretty consistent. We don't have the cheapest labor pool, but we're consistent. So they know where our economy is going to be. They know that they can invest, and they know they can invest for the long term. When we bring stability into the tax bracket, which is arguably some of the highest tax, I mean, if you look at developed countries, the average is 15%. We're at 21%, but yet people want to do business still yet inside the United States. Now we're saying, hey, look, don't plan on 5 years. You come invest long-term investment, and these taxes are going to be permanent. And that's why we need to make the research and development permanent too, because if we're going to lead in technology, we need to make sure the businesses can write that off. And it's crazy to me that you can't write off research and development when it's a business expense. I mean, you're doing it to grow your business. Why this is even an argument to me is ridiculous. I mean, if you buy a vehicle, you can write the vehicle off and for a contractor. So if you're having a research and development team that's researching new technology so you can invent the next AI program, why wouldn't you be able to write that off? And now we're going to say that we're going to make this permanent. You don't have to worry about that expiring either in 5 years. So that's where the stability and the stimulation comes from.
Yeah, and also that stipulation that you could write off big capital expenditures in your business.
Right.
And that's a big deal for companies. They want to build a building and they want to do whatever.
Yeah, and a lot of these are they're on depreciation schedules, which I honestly have a hard time with that because we grew as a cash company. When I got out of debt years ago, I was like, I'm never getting back in debt. I got out of debt in it was 2000, June of 2000. And I got out of a mountain of debt. And when I got out of there, I was like, from now on, I'm growing cash with the company. So I would pay cash for everything. If I bought a new company, I'd pay cash for it. If I bought new equipment, pay cash for it. And then I'd figure out I had to depreciate this thing out for 3 years or 5 years. Mm-hmm. And it was frustrating to me because I'm getting penalized because I'm paying cash for stuff. Restaurant, when we went in and remodeled our restaurants, we'd have to depreciate our restaurant, the remodel out 15 years. A remodel on the restaurant only lasts usually 5 years. And we're like, we have to depreciate this out for 15 years. I got 3 remodels going. I told my wife the other day we have 45 years of remodel depreciation still, and we're never going to claim it all.
Right.
And what we're trying to say is that when you invest in your company, you should be able to write it off the same year you invest it.
Which is a big deal if that all goes through. I mean, some companies will really do that pretty fast, one would think.
Yeah, yes, they will, and that makes investing a lot easier because you sit there and you go, okay, I can invest it right now or pay taxes on it. I'm buying new equipment. I'm buying new trucks. I'm expanding to another location. I'm doing stuff to build my company, grow my company. Which who wouldn't do that? Every business owner out there would want to do that, unless you're looking to sell.
All right, so last couple of things. Where do you think the holes in the getting it passed are? I mean, where do you think that the big pitfalls are?
I think the debt limit increase is going to be tough. Taking it from 4.5 to my proposal is taking it from 4.5 to 6.5.
Because you're not going to get any Democrats anywhere.
No, we're not getting Democrats anyways. This is just inside our conference. I feel like if we could take it to 6.5 and put it past the midterm election by a considerable amount, but letting the economy catch up, I feel like if we can maybe get from 1.6 trillion to maybe 1.8 trillion, I think that will help the hardliners accept that. I think making the taxes on R&D. There's some people in our conference, they don't like that. That's a sticking point for us. Medicaid is a sticking point. You have people like Josh Hawley that has been very outspoken about this. You've had Rand Paul that's very outspoken about this. You have Ron Johnson who's been very outspoken and doesn't think we're cutting far enough on this. Those are sticking points. We've got to make sure that they understand. Dan Sullivan from Alaska, he's really concerned about this. Those are some real sticky points that we've just got to massage and make sure that everybody's in a good place. What I have proposed to the president, as I said, I think it'd be helpful if us and the White House get together for a full day, not a lunch, not a half a day, but for a full day where we lock ourselves in the room and we start negotiating on all these sticking points. And I think we could get it done in a timely manner. Our goal is July 4th. I think we could possibly do it faster if we were able to get in a room and just simply sit down and work out our differences. A lot of times these are just simply misunderstandings. And if we were to bring in Speaker Johnson, or we'd bring in Jason Smith, the chairman of Ways and Means, and allow him to sit in that meeting with us, answer all the questions, we can move quickly because the House has done the hard work by building the structure.
Yeah. It seems like President Trump would operate in that environment.
Yes. Oh, he loved the idea. It's just, he's got a crazy schedule, so it's making his schedule work out.
Yeah. So you're optimistic, cautious but optimistic, fair to say?
We're going to deliver the bill. We're going to deliver the bill for the president. I am. If we don't, our midterm is going to be a disaster, and all of us know that. So we're going to deliver one big, beautiful, and now the president is saying glamorous bill to the president's desk. And we're going to deliver it as quick as we can. I'm optimistic we can do it before July 4th. And there's some people that's pessimistic about that, but those that are pessimistic about it, they also kind of want to go back to the two bill strategy, and we're not doing that. We're not going down that path.
All right. Well, we will follow the trajectory of one big, beautiful, glamorous bill, according to the president. Senator Mullin, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you for having me on. Appreciate you.